Sally and Brett, BBC Radio Lancashire. Where else? 6 minutes to 11. If you were listening to the programme a week ago, you will have heard Sally insult our next guest. She did it very stylishly. Here's how.
I'm not very keen on the whole full beard thing that's going on. A lot of young men are doing that at the moment, aren't they?
Must be out this week.
The full, yeah.
Especially if there's a bird's nest in there.
Look like a bear.
He was our guest last week. And what is more, Dom Conlon has returned for even more insults today. Although he's got his summer coat on. Have you had a trim?
Summer coat and a trim, yeah. Completely. I know.
I'm really sorry. Did it make you look at yourself?
It's not helping.
It took a few days. I just went to my bed as soon as I got in and cried. And then a few days later, I thought, right, get the kitchen scissors out.
Like a bear. Did I say like a bear?
Mrs. Thatcher didn't like anyone wearing a beard, did she?
Did she?
No, she thinks if men wore beards, they were somehow duplicitous and secretive, as if the chin is the window to the soul.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
That's probably true.
So what are you holding back? What secrets have you got?
Oh, Don, thanks.
A fat chin.
Thanks for coming back.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
I do hope you didn't take it too much to heart.
Not at all.
But we were instantly fascinated by you because you came in to talk about looking at the stars, of course, and then we happened to say, so what do you do? And he was like, I'm a poet. Oh, really?
It's not the sort of answer you expect, is it? Let's face it.
No. We wanted to talk to you a bit more about your poetry, but you've given us the book. You've given us a book
I've given you books,
year,
yeah.
And this one is called Astro Poetica. And I opened the page, and first of all, can I admire the drawings? I know it's about
Jules
the words.
Wilson, the illustrations. Jules,
absolutely beautiful.
Watercolours.
Yeah, she's a really talented artist.
But the first one I've opened at, and it's one of yours. Well, it is all yours, of course. Can I read it? It's all right.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
It's called Sometimes. You'll see a planet standing by itself in the corridor between classes. It has no sun to warm to and no moon to sing to. So maybe it's lost, or maybe it's just waiting for someone like you to say, hello, how are you? Oh, and that just...
Got you, hasn't it? Huh?
It's really struck a chord with me because it is appealing to people to not walk past somebody in the corridor, whether it's at school or at work, wherever, that lost star by themselves. And it would just be so nice to go, hi, okay.
Yeah. And this is what I find with looking at the stars, about what it tells us about ourselves, really. And there are planets that are caught kind of between kind of solar systems and without stars that have been ejected from places. And it just reminds me, like in the poem, about people.
This basically is your passion alongside poetry. We were talking with Astronomy Group.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
that's where we first.
That's right. Yeah,
and and it is amazing that something so scientific can then affect the heart so much and become so emotional.
But this is how when we first started looking up to the stars, thousands of years ago, we created constellations and gave them stories. We created heroes out of them, and that's what poetry does for me. It roots us, it puts us in our place and of our surroundings, and it's such a powerful format to do that.
That's it. You kind of know your place a bit more, don't you, when you're looking at the stars?
Yeah.
And yet they can be incredibly stirring to the imagination.
I think of the classics, the Planet Suite,
Yeah.
And I suppose there are certain planets and certain stars that we all know because of their roles in popular culture. But I guess part of the fun is going back and looking at it afresh.
Yeah.
And you reimagining that emotional interaction you have with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is, and it's kind of like the stories behind the stars are fascinating, and they change from culture to culture. With Stargazing Live, we found that in Australia when they looked at Australian kind of legends about the stars.
Well, stay with us because I need to ask, what does a poet do all day? I've always wanted to ask that, so we'll talk about that. And we've not mentioned the beard much yet.
I was just going to say, he probably just strokes his beard.
Nice work if you can get it.
Brett and Sally. Weekday mornings
on BBC Radio Lancashire.
His name is Dom Conlon. He is a poet. He has a beard. He also has a book published called Astro Poetica. Talking about his life of a poet and fending off, insults.
I didn't even bring a razor with me.
Well, have you managed to do that?
We have been joined, and I'm so glad he came back, by Dom Conlon, who I did insult because I said I didn't like full beards. And
Do you prefer his trim beard now?
It's a bit neater, isn't it?
It is. I can see your mouth now.
Everything is sort of double-edged, isn't it, here? Yeah. Are you sure you want to wear that?
I'm less of a flump now.
I said it was a bear. It doesn't look like a bear. And you were due to come in as a guest, as I'd said that, and still came and chatted with us. And in fact, you enjoyed the experience so much, you've come back again.
Absolutely. And I brought a stack of books.
Your
I could
stack of
filibuster your entire show.
I love the idea of somebody making a living out of writing poetry.
No, let's not go that far.
Well, I was going to say, what does a poet do all day? Do you have other jobs? Do you must.
Yeah, I mean, I do copywriting for video games as well, and I'm working on a book for Unbound, unbound.com, called Bad Time Stories, which is creepier short stories. So that needs kind of a lot of support at the moment. But
Did you write a lot of poetry through school then?
Yeah, I did. I discovered poetry probably in fifth year. Well, I don't know what that is in new money.
14, 15.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And then went right through and then discovered people like T.S. Eliot and Philip Larkin at A-level, and just captured it ever since, really.
And is it something, so then you loved it and you read it, and then did you start with the odd line? How did you use poetry then? Was it a way of you kind of venting your spleen, or was it romantic, or what?
I'm not romantic in the slightest. It was about looking at yourself, really.
Was it?
And then allowing yourself, as I got older, to have more fun and to write for children, sort of nonsense poetry, which I absolutely love doing.
It's that playfulness, isn't it? Just looking through this collection we've got here, see the universe through poetry, Astro Poetica. There is a playfulness and a joy and it's carefully chosen language, I suppose. All poetry is, because you've only got a finite amount of beats and space and rhythm there, so you have to pour a lot of thought into it.
It's instant. And when I go into schools to talk about poetry, some of the teachers say you're going to be really impressed with my kind of really bright students, and I find it's the opposite. I think they're great, but it's the ones with lower abilities, the ones who even have come to English. There was one lad who English was his second language, and he'd only learned it that year, and it was extraordinary because you don't need to worry about the grammar of it. You can just go straight to the feeling with poetry, and that's a beautiful thing.
Read us a piece.
I'm going to read you a piece from A.F. Harold, who's another bearded poet, actually.
Aren't they all? And, even the women.
Even the women, yes. And this is a book from his collection, The Point of Inconvenience, and it's a beautiful collection of him facing the death of his mum, and it's beautiful, and it's called The Worst Thing. The worst thing I did to you, when you began the conversation saying, "It isn't good news they've found." At that precise moment I wrote you off. As in case of fire, blast door dropped shut. I switched to neutral, said inside that you were gone, done, dusted. And at that instant was born a traitor to you.
Oh, wow. That is just absolutely
And I've read that
superb.
lots of times, and and the whole collection is just, it's so personal. And it gets straight to the point.
It did. That will resound.
When you have distilled your emotions like that and laid it out there for all to read and see and to try and empathise with, I guess, is it cathartic for you, or do you feel drained at the end of it?
A little of both. It's good to kind of face up to the truths, and sometimes you find unexpected truths in the poetry that you write. It makes you face yourself. It's all about honesty. You've got to be honest with yourself.
We'll talk about facing yourself. This is a poem of yours that you wrote, and you're going to read this for us now,
I will,
aren't you?
yeah.
We go towards traffic and travel.
Yeah.
But just put that in context.
Well,
for
this
us.
is called bent back, and I've got a condition called scoliosis where the spine curves. So for much of my childhood, I was wearing a rigid body brace to keep me straight. And so you get called names. You know, everybody gets called names at school, and sometimes they hurt. And it's how you kind of turn that around and learn about the strength in yourself, basically. So this is called bent back. I heard every word when I was 9. Bent back, bent back. Look at him, bent back. I heard every word when I was being bullied for having a back as twisted as a question mark. I heard every word and I stood and I said, that soon I'll have a spine of steel, that soon the doctors would break me, then make me new again. That soon they'd core me like an apple and fill me with nectar from the Garden of Eden. That soon I'd be unbreakable, unshakable, a thing carved from beneath a mountain with veins of magma, a thing able to cause earthquakes with a cough, and storms with a sneeze, and that then they'd know how a bad word felt when it was deflected and reflected back with the power of science. And I'm laughing now, because I know this. I know I held them there before me, not with fists or fear, but with a voice. And though I stood there reliant on doctors, I was defiant by myself, and there and then I put a lid on any kid I'd care to, who'd dare to tell me what was normal. And I showed them all how lucky I was, because even though my body's crashing, I had a voice like rivers smashing, and that a back as twisted as a question mark means I'm always inquiring, searching for inspiring, with a heart that's never tiring. And guess what? They heard every word.
More to come from Dom and his beard and his poetry here
You've just
on
made me
BBC
cry.
Radio Lancashire. It's all right. The One Show did that last night. You're in good company.
Dom, that was beautiful. So we've been chatting with Dom about his poetry, and
It was emotional, wasn't it? You
wanted
felt the force of it.
Yes, I really did. I physically felt that in my stomach when you read that.
Thank
it
you.
was beautiful, and presumably then, as a poet, that's achieved what it needed to do.
Absolutely, yeah, it
Yeah,
is. It's
so-
worth the
Oh.
reaction.
Do you think we've got it wrong with
Beautiful.
poetry sometimes, in that it's forced on us at a tender age with all this flowery language, and there are Victorians, and they don't really resonate with us when we're 7, 8 years old, and so it's very standoffish. And I suppose you get this reaction all the time: oh, poetry, oh, he's a poet, is he? That's who he thinks he is.
I think we gravitate towards poetry naturally without ever really realising it. So we associate the word, like you say, with flowery language, and that's not most of our experience. You know, you go on Twitter or Instagram, and the poetry on there is ordinary words. It just
Well, you look at song lyrics.
yeah, exactly.
You look at the poet we've known and have now taken to our hearts,
Yeah.
Longfellow, in
Yeah.
Manchester
Totally, yeah,
recently, and
yeah.
there was something about that
Yeah.
verse he wrote that connected.
It was powerful, and Tony's work is amazing. I've known him for a few years, and well, quite a few years, and he's incredible. He's a really powerful.
Well, I
wordsmith.
thought yours was as powerful, absolutely stunning.
I'll
We've got
tell
with
him
us
that.
as well Nick Hunt in the studio, who's creative director from Mid Pennine Arts.
Morning, Nick.
Do you
Morning.
ever read poetry, or
You write it.
did you hear poetry as you were coming in? Did you hear Dom's work then?
I caught the tail end of it, and it sounded lovely, and it's lovely to walk into to what feels like a program devoted to arts and culture.
Is that what we are?
It's a rare treat.
It is nice. It is nice. Yeah.
But definitely, I think poetry is having a bit of a moment after Tony Walsh caught the spirit of that evening in Manchester.
He really did. Yeah.
yeah.
It's something I think a lot of teenagers probably, right? I won't embarrass you by asking you if you did, but then
I will. Did you? Did you write as a teenager?
I didn't actually. No.
Not just keep it in the drawer or lock it away.
No, I wrote prose, but no, poetry hasn't been quite my thing.
Okay, go on. Sorry. I
Did you,
interrupted
Sally?
Yes.
What's happened to it?
Oh yes, I did. I wrote loads of it. I poured my heart out into poetry as a teenager, and I don't know where it is now, but it would be so fun.
But it's a skill we stop, isn't it?
Yes.
Because it mattered so much. And I know, we're full of angst and we're tormented as teenagers, and the creative muse and urge, and maybe even a love letter, unrequited love, and all these things that happen in your teens. And yet, as we get older, we stop doing that. And we still could, unless you are a poet. of
We
course.
still can, and everybody's a poet. That's the thing. It's what you say to kids, and never lose it. You know, if your reaction is to go to words to deal with anything, then don't be ashamed of that. Don't be ashamed of the teenage angst that we felt. You know,
Yeah.
we don't change.
It is funny, isn't it? It's like what Brett said, that it seemed okay to do it then, and it would feel a bit odd if somebody popped round for coffee, and then what were you doing? I was just writing a poem, and you think, what? You lost
But why
it.
not? I mean, I was just listening to music. I was just
Yes.
writing, I was
Yes.
just having a cup of tea. Why is
Or-
it not a part of life?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, it was song lyrics that meant something to
Yeah.
me. It was Bob Dylan,
Which is
who
poetry,
I
isn't it?
grew up with in the 60s and 70s. Yeah.
And Leonard Cohen.
And with his Nobel Prize that
Yeah,
he got,
absolutely.
you know,
Has he
richly-
accepted it yet? Has he managed to? Yeah, I think he's.
I think he
he's
did,
got
didn't
there,
he?
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
gone to Sweden now.
Now then, we're all being encouraged to get out more and exercise, and it's great to hear about a new route that takes people in Hyndburn and Rosendale to some of the secret corners, neglected pathways and hidden gems on their doorstep, which is what Nick's here to talk about. And I just love the idea that there are places just round the corner from you that you never even knew about. That's an absolute gem. And the routes that have been planned across Hyndburn and Rosendale will take you to them, won't they?
Yeah, this is a programme of new greenways. A greenway is a cycleway plus. It's not just for cyclists, it's for horse riders or walkers, prams, wheelchairs, whatever. It's an encouragement to get out and take a healthy choice
some fresh air,
and explore. And these are built on old railway lines primarily. And some of the sections exist already, but Lancashire County Council is joining them up into much more of an integrated system.
And it makes such a difference not having to travel miles. Having said that, we went to near Ashbourne, I think it was, recently, and we went on a cycle path there. And because you're away from the traffic, it makes such a difference. And so even if you're going for a walk, don't have to be on two wheels. Don't have to be on your unicycle. To have this space that is yours and very close by, it makes such a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, we worked on one before with the County Council. That was Padiham Greenway, which was introduced a few years ago and is incredibly popular now. And when you go out on Padiham Greenway, you see whole families strolling, dog walkers, all sorts of perambulatory devices. Yeah, it's great.
And I think there is something lovely in a walk that's been kind of set out for you, because if we head off on a walk, we end up just walking around our block, and I don't know where to go. I don't know where the nice places are. So whereas if there's a greenway that's already been planned by yourselves, then you know that actually it's a proper walk. It quite often takes you around in a circle, doesn't it? So you end up coming back again. Yeah. And that somebody's put thought into it, and you're not just ambling along. You could end up walking across somewhere you shouldn't be.
These routes are not just for wandering, though. These are quite long distance routes that connect places that people live with places that people work.
Right.
And one of them, Valley of Stone Greenway, stretches from Rochdale up past Bacup all the way to Rawtenstall. There is the Weaver's Wheel, which is a circular route around Blackburn, which Blackburn Council
I've seen the signs.
leading on.
I understand what the signs mean now.
Yeah. But the one I particularly want to talk about is a lovely route from Accrington down past Haslingden and Helmshaw to Stubbins and to Ramsbottom. So that's a 12k route that goes past some employment centres, past Holland
It's right
Pies.
where we live, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And there'll be pockets of it that are a world away from a busy road and the fumes. And I'm interested when you said it's for prams as well, because that was what I found. There's some lovely country walks, but they're not pram friendly and they're not wheelchair friendly. And so we'll talk about that in a moment or two. Going to talk poetry now, though, because I think Christine is on the line. Good morning, Christine.
Good morning to you, and Sally too. I've just got a little poem here which I've been writing ever since I was a little girl, Brett.
All right.
This is one, Mum and Dad. It's only a short one. Two special people I hold in my heart, for they have looked after me right from the start. In sickness and health each night and day, they've cared for me in their own special way. When things have been happy and things have been sad, I know I could go to my Mum and Dad. These two special people I hold so dear can help to soothe a shedding tear. As time goes by, I have to agree that they meant all the world to me.
Oh, how lovely.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
That's lovely of you. And final word with Dom, who the poet, amongst many other strings to his bow, on that. Some people write poetry for themselves, some, I suppose with you oftentimes, it is to be heard and to communicate. But the process of sitting there and transforming these memories and anecdotes and ideas we have into a form like that's quite magical, isn't it?
It's fantastic, and when it kind of snaps together, when you've kind of interrogated your words and looked in, and sometimes you start off writing one thing and you find you write a completely different thing. It might be the last line that suddenly you pick up on and then use to create something completely new. It's transformative.
Just before you go, You're a walker as well, you enjoy
I
it.
love walking. I love getting lost, which is lucky.
Yeah,
Cause,
before you get lost.
yeah, I set off on a walk and I generally get lost. But yeah, I love it, and close to home. You know,
Yeah,
it's surprising what you see.
It is, isn't it? This is what these walks are all
Yeah.
about. It is just round the corner from you, could be that hidden gem. So more to come from Nick. Dom, thank you so much
My
for
pleasure.
coming
Thanks
in.
for
And
having me.
thanks for the book and making me
Next
cry.
time we see him, just be down to a tash at this rate, won't it?
I love your beard.
Oh, no.
Oh no,
No, sir.
no.